mushrooms, I feel like, were just another ingredient that I started incorporating into my diet when I started really thinking about, the way that I was feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. I really started changing my eating habits. What we put
Hmm.
into our bodies matters. And so starting to eat just organic, clean ingredients, I noticed a huge difference, and it just made me curious about what other food-based ingredients have been used throughout history to help improve.
That was a sneak peek of our episode today with Josh Dominick from WiseBar. Josh is the co-creator of a really cool company called WiseBar, which is the first to market functional mushroom bar. I think you'll find this episode really interesting. The topic is around mindful eating, and Josh talks about his experience in discovering which ingredients were helpful to him and his co-founder, and how when they started paying attention to the ingredients that they selected, they were able to uncover some really unique benefits. I think this ties in really nicely with the topic of mindful eating and really paying attention to your body and listening to what works for you. I met Josh at a trade show a couple months back, and he was just a really interesting person to work with and always really enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Made to Sustain podcast. I'm your host, Kelly D'Amico, and I'm so excited to introduce to you my guest, Josh Dominick from WiseBar. Hey Josh.
Hey, Kelly, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, super glad to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about WiseBar?
Yeah, WiseBar is the first to market functional mushroom bar. So we've incorporated 100% organic ingredients, sustainably sourced, along with the most sustainable packaging that we can source at this time. We're actually the first to market functional mushroom bar. We use 3,000 milligrams of adaptogens in functional mushrooms, which is industry leading. That's important to us because it's a truly functional dose.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I like to start by asking our guests, what is the most interesting thing you've eaten lately?
That's a great question. I think that ube, Japanese purple sweet potato, I guess it's not that interesting, but it's a really phenomenal new food that I've stumbled across that I've just fallen in love with.
Cool. I have yet to try it, but I don't typically dabble in purple produce.
Well, you'll have to try
Awesome.
it. Yeah, they're delicious for sure.
Yeah, cool. Well, tell me about WiseBar and how did you get started?
Yeah, so a few years ago, my friend and I, Ryan, we live up in the mountains in Colorado, and we're constantly outdoors, whether we're fishing or snowboarding or skiing or hiking, biking. We spend the majority of our time out in nature. And we were just really disappointed with the offerings that were currently on shelf. In the nutrition bar set specifically, it's almost impossible to find anything that's just made with whole natural ingredients. You see so many syrups, whether it's brown rice syrup or tapioca syrup, and almost every single bar incorporates either artificial flavoring or natural flavoring. But we turned inward and thought a lot about creating something that we really wanted to enjoy when we were out in nature. So we started with just simple whole ingredients. That was the biggest thing from the start, was that we weren't going to use any syrups to create the flavors. The profiles that we've created, well, we really pride ourselves on the fact that all of the flavors that you're getting are from nature. And we wanted to enhance the bars in another way by incorporating adaptogens and functional mushrooms, something that we had been starting to use in our daily lives to really help with just kind of natural energy, to kind of get away from caffeine. In addition to that, we both have struggled even previously with anxiety, and it was something that we had both noticed helped us a ton. So we thought, why not set ourselves apart, not only with the ingredients, let's incorporate something that's new to our diets and really provide that additional benefit. So we started from the ground level. What does it mean to incorporate these ingredients? The reason that you see most other functional mushroom companies have a fraction of the functional mushrooms that we're using isn't because they don't want to use enough to make a difference. It's kind of twofold. First being, they're not the cheapest ingredients, especially when you're using organic, really high quality
Hmm.
mushroom powders. And then the second is that inherently these mushroom powders are incredibly bitter. They just don't taste very good. So
Right.
biggest struggle, biggest hurdle is definitely creating a bar that tasted delicious, first and foremost. And then to see how many of these mushrooms we could incorporate and maintain that flavor profile. And we were able to achieve that by relying on nature to complement the mushrooms themselves. So instead of trying to use all of these masking agents or natural flavorings to overpower the mushrooms, we leaned into really poignant natural ingredients like ginger and turmeric and cinnamon and these flavor profiles that you traditionally wouldn't see in a nutrition bar. We worked with mycologists for a couple of years to develop the formulations to give individuals all of the benefits that come with functional mushrooms and adaptogens. In addition to that, everything we do is 100% organic, sustainably sourced, non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, all of the good stuff. So we took a lot of care in developing this product. We're incredibly proud and pleased to hear the most consistent feedback we get is that they taste incredible, that they're the best tasting bar a lot of our consumers have ever had. And then obviously the second thing that we hear the most is that people really are feeling the difference. So that means the world to us.
Yeah, and I remember when I ran into you at Expo West, and you gave me a couple bars, and I was sitting in the airport, and I was hungry, and I was like, "Oh, I've got a bar," and I ate it, and I was like, "Wow, this is a great tasting bar," and it hit the spot, and I didn't feel jittery or when you feel that you've eaten something that's not incredibly good for you and you're just like, okay, well, that got the job done.
Right.
I didn't feel that way after I ate a Wise bar, so that's a nod to you
Well, thank
making a
you.
great product.
Yeah, it means a lot.
Yeah. What is your favorite product out of your portfolio? I see you've got a bunch of boxes behind you, but I'm wondering which one's your favorite.
Yeah, I love the peanut banana. It's kind of our like a really staple bar. If you
Mhm.
grew up eating bars and hiking, it was always peanut butter. We use whole peanuts, 100% organic whole peanut butter as well. And then the one thing that we're doing that I haven't seen any other companies do is that we're using 100% organic dried banana pieces as opposed to
Mhm.
freeze dried banana that just like strips it of all its flavor. Or banana natural flavoring is really prominent in the space because bananas aren't super cheap, but they're so good. So when you get that bite with like a chunk of banana, it is so delicious. So that's my favorite. Then my new favorite right now is we just did a limited release collaboration with Fantastic Fungi, which is an incredible documentary on Netflix.
I love that documentary. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So we just did we partnered with Louis Schwartzberg and the team over at Fantastic Fungi to develop a product that incorporates 5 functional mushrooms. It's a cherry chocolate bar, and it's so good. We use whole cherries, whole Bing cherries, and it's delicious. So that'll launch sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, that's exciting. I hope I can get some samples of that. It'd be
Happy to send
phenomenal.
them your way. Definitely.
Well, I want to get back into something that you talked about initially about why you started taking mushrooms and how does that go back into the whole topic we're talking about today, which is mindful eating.
Mushrooms, I feel like, were just another ingredient that I started incorporating into my diet when I started really thinking about, the way that I was feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. I really started changing my eating habits. Something we would love to put on the box, but we wouldn't be able to work with any retailer is something that I believe full heartedly. And that is that food is medicine. What we put
Mhm.
into our bodies matters. And so starting to eat just organic, clean ingredients, I noticed a huge difference. And it just made me curious about what other food based ingredients have been used throughout history to help improve these various ailments that are becoming so much more prominent in today's society. So, back in 2017, we started researching a lot of what Eastern medicine had been using and functional mushrooms. I mean, mushrooms in general were just so prominent. I mean, even today, doctors will prescribe various dosages of functional mushrooms for full-blown diseases. So there was kind of murmurs and within our communities and talking about the benefits of mushrooms as a whole. And then specifically, as I started doing research into functional mushrooms, I became more and more curious about the benefits. Specifically for me, lion's mane was something that I was really curious about. I've struggled my entire life with ADD. And to have something natural to really help with the cognitive function and the focus it was so much more attractive to me than something prescribed. And that's really what I've experienced in relying on food in something so noticeable in my life as I've started to incorporate functional mushrooms on a daily basis. I think the stability of being able to rely on your day to day well being is something that's so important.
Something a lot of people take for granted. Yeah. So, does WiseBar have their own definition of mindful eating, right? Like, I know we talked a little bit about how there's things you'd want to put on your package that wouldn't necessarily be approved by retailers, but do you have your own definition of what mindful eating is and how you guys deliver on that trend?
Yeah, I mean, for us as a company, one thing that we always come back to is that what we put into our bodies matters, and then what we put back into the earth really matters as well. So that's why we
Mhm.
focused on, we have a handful of environmental partners that we work with, a bunch of nonprofits that we contribute to. We're 1% for the planet members. And in addition to that, we have a partnership with Trees for the Future, which is a phenomenal organization out of Africa. And we've committed a tree planted for every single box that we sell. They work with farmers across rural areas of Africa to teach sustainable farming practices, to not only plant trees that are supposed to be there, but they're also helping teach these farmers to utilize these trees so that it replenishes the soil in a way that not only are we reforesting the land, but it's also providing a higher yield of fruit and crop for these farmers on a yearly basis. So it's a really cool organization that we're working with over there. We also work with OSC Squared, or One Step Closer, for zero waste packaging. So we're trying really hard to get to 100% zero waste packaging. For years, we developed 100% compostable film. And through conversations with a lot of experts within the space, a lot of environmentalists that we were working with, and in addition to that, with Whole Foods, actually, who is taking some really great initiatives on sustainable packaging, because industrial level composting isn't readily available for most consumers.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
product can
I
actually be
agree.
worse. Yeah, it can be worse for the environment, which was totally news to us and really sad. But because the infrastructure is not quite there yet, using more of like a metallized base film can actually be better for the environment. We are still working with our team and the members of OSC Squared to really figure out when can we make that transition and be confident in it. When is it going to be readily available? Because it should be. I mean, it's just, I think that there's policy that needs to be in place to encourage compostable packaging, compost in general at a national scale. There's a lot of education that needs to go into that, but it's something that's so avoidable to be filling these landfills. So working towards recyclable packaging is, I think, the first step. And then as soon as we can, I think that everybody, at least everybody that we like working with, agrees that the move to compostable packaging is the future.
Hmm. So you really cover a lot of topics there for mindfulness, right? You've got the mental acuity. It sounds like you've also got the nutritional element, and then the other, one of my favorite aspects of mindfulness is what's the impact of the product beyond when you eat it? What happens after that? Which I think is something that more people need to pay attention to because there's, just when you eat a bar, it's not done with you, right? Everything's got to go somewhere. So I like that approach.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think on the nutrition piece of it too, something worth mentioning, a lot of times when we're demoing the product, we get a lot of people who, immediately turn over the ingredient list and the nutrition panel. And we get
Of
so much
course.
praise on the ingredient list that it's every single ingredient on there. There's not a single additive. But then simultaneously, they'll talk about how there's 12 or 13 grams of sugar in each bar, and they'll say that's way too much sugar. And I think when I come back to mindful eating, I really think about you know eating naturally. And the conversation has surprised me how often I have to defend natural sugars and fruit-based sugars as a really good thing for your body.
I
And
know.
so many people are like, nope, it's just too much sugar. That's way too high in sugar. And it's like, well, it's not 37 grams in a can of cola. It's not
Yeah.
key. This is sugar that your body needs, and it's coming in a really whole manner. But it's been interesting how much of an uphill battle that has been.
It's definitely an uphill battle. And I mean, as long as I've been in the food industry, people are always going to have something to complain about. So I can tell you, you're
Yeah.
in for the long haul here. Yeah, sugar is one of those ones that's, you know, years ago it was fat, and now everybody's embracing fat again. And before that it was carbs, and nobody wants carbs, and now it's sugar, which is just another form of carbohydrate. But I think we get in trouble with the reductionist point of view, like when you're reducing it down to a single ingredient and a single amount, right? Like, yeah, it is the amount of sugar on a package, but you're forgetting that there's all of the other benefits that your body processes with it when you're using whole ingredients. So when you're eating something like a banana, yeah, it's got high in sugar. It's a carbohydrate based fruit of a tree. And you need those nutrients, and you need the fiber and the potassium and all of the other ingredients that go along with it for it to be beneficial to your body, rather than in that 37 grams in a cola. So I think we get ourselves in a lot of trouble, and I think there's a lot of education there.
I think so too. And there's, all of these new sugar substitutes, stevia not being new at all, but now
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows how terrible that is for you. But there's a new
Mm-hmm.
ingredient called allulose that is becoming, increasingly popular as this sugar substitute, but it not being natural, being pretty driven by science. And I wouldn't claim to be a food scientist, Kelly. I know you are. So,
Yeah, so
I mean, I would
I can
honestly
talk a
hear if you have an opinion on allulose. But I mean, those ingredients just scare me. Anything that I don't know,
uh-huh.
that I've seen in whole form, kind
Mhm.
of freaks me out.
Yeah, I mean, like from a food science perspective, anything that ends in OSE is a
Right.
sugar, right? So dextrose, glucose is like what you have in your bananas. Fructose, which is like people also get a negative connotation of it. Fructose is honey. So like anything OSE is sugar. So allulose is a type of sugar. It's a rare sugar. It's found in things like raisins and prunes in small amounts. So it's called a rare sugar because it's not naturally occurring at high levels. When it's at those low levels, it's okay. When it's naturally derived out of an ingredient, that's fine. But things like prunes and dates, they're known for their high fiber content and because they give you a boost in your digestion, right? So allulose does part of that too. And so some people can't digest allulose. It's more used as a bulking agent. So it's like meant to like give things body when you take the sugar out of something. If you have sugar water, right? If you take all the sugar out of it, it's just water, so it doesn't have the solids in it. So that's what allulose is used for, and it's not as sweet. So you usually have to supplement it with something like stevia. Um, but yeah, I mean, some people just have digestibility issues, and it's not taken from like industrialized allulose isn't taken from its natural form. It has to be processed. So you need to take it from somewhere that has a high amount of sugar, and then through processing, modify it, and then make sure that it's available at those high levels. So you're not getting them from prunes or raisins or dates, like
Right.
maybe you would think.
Yeah, the over processing. I can't get on board with. We've talked. I mean, we have considered in house. We're working with a couple of our professional athletes right now to develop a protein, a higher protein count bar.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, like, do we try and curate it to this trend right now of low sugar? And ironically, I'm having the conversation with one of the world's best skiers, who's one of our new athletes, Alex Ferreira, and he was drinking. We're sitting there, and he's drinking his morning smoothie, a strawberry banana smoothie, and we're having this conversation, and he's pretty much like, I mean, I bet you this has 40 grams of sugar in it, and I need that natural sugar to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, no, man. I mean, if we're actually developing it for us and not like if we're developing it for what we believe in and not for what we think will sell, we can't stray away from that. And it was just, we weren't, I don't think we were really considering it, but we were just like kind of open conversation talking about, like, I mean, do you think
Mm-hmm.
that this is something worth looking into? And we pretty wholeheartedly said no. I mean, our biggest thing is ingredients that people know and can pronounce, whole food ingredients. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
stray away from that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a place for food processing and keeping ingredients shelf stable and, feeding the masses. But I think there's a fine balance now of, how do you make sure that we're not doing it in a way that's damaging to the people eating it and damaging to the planet. too. I think it's a tough balance.
Yeah, and Kelly, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly when it comes to genetically modified ingredients. We don't use them
Hmm.
because we don't have to, but there's a place for
Hmm.
it. I mean, in exactly
Yeah.
what you said, in feeding the masses and solving a lot of the world's problems, there are ways that we can, yeah, help preserve and increase availability. So I completely agree, but I think that we're creating a product that is, unfortunately, it's not solving world hunger. We maybe one day we can try and take something like that on, but we've got to keep it kind of within the lines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think any one company should sign up to solve that problem. I think that's a it's a huge problem. So don't worry. If anything, we'll get you a team.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I think we got a long way to go to get this startup
Yeah,
to kind of, more humming before we take on a problem of that magnitude.
absolutely. What are some of the ingredients that you selected? Like you mentioned lion's mane and some other functional mushrooms. How many mushrooms are in WiseBar and what does each one do?
The formulations have been changing a little bit. So
Hmm.
originally we had three separate formulations, one for energy, one for focus, and one for immunity across 6 flavors. We started working with major retail. We launched in January of 2023 and came out of the gate, and buyers within the bar space really appreciated our product, and we had a great opportunity to launch at scale. There has been a bit of an uphill battle in making any of those functional claims. Even if you can prove a lot of them, there's just a lot of additional steps that you have to take. So we got rid of those functions and we took the best of each mushroom to create just a single 3,000 milligram blend across each. That's kind of like your multivitamin of functional mushrooms in every bar. Like this is what you need every day if you want to get the benefits of functional mushrooms. And we've been relying on lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, and then an adaptogenic root, ashwagandha, that is not a functional mushroom. So those are kind of the four main adaptogenic ingredients that we're using right now. With that being said, I had mentioned how we're developing a performance based bar with some of our professional athletes. We're going to bring back cordyceps for that, which is amazing for lung health and blood oxygen levels. So obviously works great with athletes. And I think that online we're going to get back to creating more specific use formulations for various functions. And then we'll have kind of our staple line of products on retail shelves.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in creating and launching Wise Bars? I know you talked about some of the claims with retail. Why do you think that is?
I think that it is a level of liability that
Mm,
major retailers just aren't comfortable having. And it's I think it helps simplify a lot of retail level customer questions around the ingredients. If you have a product that says immunity on it and it's not sitting in the vitamin set, I think
mhm,
that it opens up a line of questions that could be asked that a lot of retail employees probably aren't prepared to answer. And it's a task that I don't think that major retail wants to take on. And I don't totally disagree with that decision. I think that there is oversimplification a lot of the time. We are, like, for example, we're getting a little bit of pushback from a retailer right now about the turkey tail. So that's coming on the tail end of the FDA really starting to champion turkey tail as an immune supportive ingredient that they've done clinical trials on. And they've
mhm.
started to prove just how significant it can be for liver and kidney health. And this retailer that we're starting to work with, I think, was a little bit hesitant to take that on in a food ingredient. I do understand that those questions at a retail level can be really difficult to answer. Someone says, hey, is this really going to cure this, or is this really going to help me fix this? You don't want to take on that liability of having your employees answer those questions. So, I mean, that's been the biggest hurdle for sure. The other thing is because we don't use any syrups or any preservatives, but it can also get your shelf life way up. And when you use different emulsifying agents, these things can really help extend your shelf life. We are one of the shortest shelf life bars on shelf. And with the traditional distribution system into major retail, that can be a major issue.
Is it refrigerated?
It is not. And that was a conscious decision. It is shelf stable, but
Mhm.
because we don't use any of these preservatives or, any of these emulsifiers, it's more quality control than anything else. The bar itself isn't going to expire, but we do put a pretty short best by date on it because we really want to maintain the customer experience. We take so much pride in where these ingredients come from that it's really
Mhm.
important to us that when the customer tries it, that they have the same experience that we do when they're coming right off the line, and you take a bite and you're like, oh my God, it's so fresh. It's so good. So we recently just shortened our shelf life by 4 months. So
Mhm.
we brought it from 12 to 8. One of our flavors that we have a couple online that are a 6 month shelf life, and that's so much more controllable. It's
Mhm.
the issue is that when you get into distribution, it might go out the door, but then it might take a month to hit the distribution center, and then it might take another 6 weeks before it hits the shelf at the store level. So sometimes you're looking at, 2 to 3 months before the customer gets it after it's been produced or after it's left the warehouse. There could be a week in there before the distributor comes and picks it up. So, you really are looking at maybe 3 months before the consumer even has the opportunity to try it. So that's been the other uphill battle that we faced along the way, and really committing to supernatural ingredients and just the most wholesome bar we could create is that you fight in distribution these constant battles of how do we get this to the customer as quickly as possible? How can we maintain the quality without sacrificing the integrity?
Yeah. And I think that's, they have it in the refrigerated section too, right? Like dairy has a shelf life, like we test it at a shelf life of 45 days, even though like you're supposed to eat it within 2 weeks because you have that distribution time. It's got to wait for quality to inspect it. So yeah, I mean, your food's never going to taste the same right off the line versus as it does, a couple weeks from there too.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point about the retail space. I remember my very first job. I worked at a local pharmacy and we had a supplements aisle, and people would come up to me and ask me for what supplements they should take for their ailments. And I just remember reading the labels when I was bored there, and I was like, hey, maybe this is one you could take because that's what the label says. Like 17 and like totally,
Right.
totally
Totally.
unqualified to be giving this advice. So I think that's probably a smart move for your retailer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. In your opinion, how can functional ingredients and health forward mindful ingredients create a more sustainable food system?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that it just continues the conversation towards organic and natural food and medicine alternatives. As a whole, that movement is uplifting the entire industry. I think that as the conversation continues, it encapsulates everything that I think a lot of health conscious individuals are striving for. How do we incorporate more natural ingredients? How do we improve upon the supply chain issues that we're currently facing? I feel like it's more than anything, this wave of opinion moving towards, I really do think that what I put into my body matters. And there
Mhm.
are more solutions than historically would have been provided to me, and it starts with food.
Yeah. I think you mentioned in some of our previous conversations about climate resiliency and biodiversity, and how do you think those factor in too?
Yeah, I think that functional mushrooms do wonders for our body and for our mental state. But mushrooms as a whole, there's so much scientific research coming out in the exploration of how mushrooms can help fight climate change. These different mycelial based mushrooms that I saw one that Paul Stamets, who's an absolute legend in the space, is
Mhm.
really championing right now. It can literally eat plastic at a mass level at like 115 times the rate. It might even be quicker. You'll have to fact check me. And I wish that I knew the mushroom off the top of my head. But they're starting to look at how we can really help support mushroom growth in the fight against climate change. another, the mycelial network in a forest is like the brain of the forest. And it's amazing that these mushrooms can help communicate within the forest, under the ground, from tree to tree. Hey, we need, this area needs more water, and the root systems actually adhere to that knowledge. It's a level of wisdom that we certainly don't understand yet, but I think
Mhm.
that with acceptance and curiosity starting to be provoked on a really grand level, we're starting to see all of these incredible scientific explorations coming true, or just coming to fruition. And it's really neat. I am a firm believer that fungi is going to be a huge help in the fight against climate change, and that we're going to see more and more scientific research come out about how we can utilize our mycelial friends.
Yeah, I mean, if Paul's statements is excited about a certain kind of mushroom, then it's something to be really excited about because he loves all mushrooms. So I'm on board with whichever one he's championing. That's really cool.
Yeah, I recently saw him talking about how in Japan they took another kind of mushroom and they put nodes, it was a single oat, at the major cities across Japan. And they've obviously developed an incredible light rail system to transport humans throughout all these cities. And there were, I would imagine, thousands of engineers that came together to think about what is the most efficient way to build out this system. And what they did is more recently, is they put a oat as a node on each of those major destinations. And then they put this mushroom down and it spored out. And at first it was really exploratory and it started going out in every direction. And then as it started to figure out where each of these pieces of oats were, it restructured itself in the most efficient way. And it was actually more efficient than what they had come up with for their transit system. So, I mean, just the true wisdom of these fungi, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on.
That is so cool. I mean, that's just fascinating.
It really is. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. When people are embracing the world of mindful eating and ingredients that are better for them, better for the planet, better for their health, what are some of the more innovative products you found besides your own?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I have to give a shout out to Shane Heath, who's the founder of Mudwater, and that kind of being the original coffee substitute, really starting to utilize functional mushrooms. I feel like he has been really unfairly under attack over the last year, as a bunch of competition has started to come out where they're trying. It's kind of slanderous. They're trying to say that their mushrooms aren't third party tested. That there is only benefit in the fruiting body, and we use fruiting body and are using mycelial based as well, and how the mushrooms are grown. And I know Shane, and I know that company really well, and they're doing incredible things. So I think, as far as a truly incredible product, I have to give a shout out to Shane and Mudwater and all the folks over at Mudwater. It is such a great coffee alternative to really, get people the same boost that you might expect from a cup of coffee, without the caffeine, without the acidity that comes along with using coffee. So that's a really phenomenal product. There's another company called Odyssey Elixir. I want to say that they're using like 2,500 milligrams of functional mushrooms in addition to caffeine in some of their energy drinks. But it's such a natural energy drink where it really is just caffeine and these functional mushrooms. And a big part of that is that they're using a substantial dosage of functional mushrooms. And that's something that I think that consumers will start to become more aware of, is that a lot of companies don't list the amount of functional mushrooms that they're using, because it's really just like a marketing ploy. Like, oh, we have lion's mane or we have reishi. But if you're not getting,
Ashwagandha.
yeah,
Yeah, it's another
exactly.
huge one
And
now.
totally. And if you're not getting the right dosage of those, you're never going to feel the effects. You're not going to get the benefit. So, yeah, those are two companies that I really do appreciate.
Awesome. And what exciting developments do you see in the future of mindful eating and the functional mushroom space? What's coming that
Yeah, I think that more than anything, it's going to be the introduction of newer mushrooms. There's a mushroom called shilajit that's really interesting. It's incredibly expensive right now,
I
but
bet.
especially within the functional mushroom space, as all of this attention and love starts to pour in for functional mushrooms, I think that the growing processes are going to get easier. I think that the supply chain is going to lighten up a little bit. And that's going to provide the opportunity for companies like ours to start using all of these different functional mushrooms that are right now relatively scarce. So I think just like the addition of more functional mushrooms and adaptogens is something that I'm really excited for. And, in mindful eating as a whole, I think, yeah, the adaptogenic space. I mean, we put ashwagandha on there as an adaptogen, but, we're using whole ginger root and turmeric root, which are also adaptogens. And we're not including that in the 3,000 milligrams because we're using a significant amount. We don't want to be like, oh, our cinnamon turmeric bar has, you know, 10,000 milligrams of adaptogens and functional mushrooms. We're really trying to, like ashwagandha, lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail. These are the superheroes that we're trying to champion right now. But
Mhm.
beyond that, I think ginger and turmeric and cinnamon is such an incredible ingredient. And so I think
Mhm.
that, yeah, as mindful eating, I think that ingredient based mindful eating is going to become more common knowledge in the years to come. I think that people are going to start to really understand. Right now, we have a lot of early adapters that are like, oh, yeah, I love turmeric. I know it's great for my immune system. I know it's an awesome anti inflammatory. Ginger root, we use a lot of ginger in our products, is so good for your digestive system. And it's these things that right now I feel like it's a lot of early adapters that are aware of these benefits. I think that that's going to become more commonplace.
How do you educate people on the benefits of these functional foods and combat any misconceptions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Since launch, we really focused on our retail growth, and now we're starting to pivot into D2C and focusing on online and obviously advertising through various social media channels or Google AdWords, and starting to think about how much do we want to push our product and how much do we want to push general education of the space. It's a daunting task, and I think that through opportunities like doing a limited release flavor with Fantastic Fungi, we're kind of doubling our opportunity to educate about these ingredients. So that's how we're going about it is, let's partner with some really cool people within the space to kind of shout from the rooftops the benefits and help uplift the overall knowledge of functional mushrooms and adaptogens. But it's a moving target, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's one of those things that we just talked about coming full circle.
Right,
The
of
the
course.
world of consumers is a fascinating
It
space and it
is.
moves faster than anyone can predict.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We're coming up on time here. What's something you wish more people knew about in the world of food sustainability or in the world of mindful eating?
Yeah, a movement that I love is this ugly foods movement. I think that something that I wish that more people knew was that just because your cucumber isn't perfectly straight doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. Just because it had like a yellow belly cucumber. I mean, it's just like these imperfect foods, and there are literally companies. There's Imperfect Foods as a company,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
Uglies is a potato chip company. So, like, the idea that because this is the picture of an apple you've seen or that's been on grocery shelves for the last 30 years, 20 years, especially, just because that's the picture you have of this natural produce does not mean that that's what it is supposed to look like in nature all the time. And I think there's
Mhm.
so much food waste that can be avoided if we just educate ourselves and understand a little bit more about, hey, not every single piece of produce that we buy from the grocery store doesn't need to be picturesque, that it will taste the exact same, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of imperfection in our lives in general.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I'm someone who always shops the reject produce rack. That's one of my favorite places to shop because not only are you getting produce that's obviously it's discounted because people
Yeah,
don't
you're
want
getting
it.
a great deal and it's
Yeah,
fun.
I get a great deal and it's like a little challenge for me because I've got to like they're damaged. So now I've got to use them soon. So what can I make with all of these?
Yeah.
That is always so fun for me. And maybe it's just me as someone who loves to cook and loves uh, fighting food waste, but I agree. I think it's fun.
Yeah, in the same way. Totally.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else about WiseBar mission or the WiseBar brand that you'd like to highlight that we haven't talked about today?
I think that more than anything, I just want to thank how many people have gotten involved with WiseBar. This was a total pipe dream from my best friend and I, Ryan. And it's been incredible, the outpour of love, not only from our community, starting really small and local and getting into every single coffee shop and, local grocery store around the mountains here in Colorado. The support there was incredible. And then just more recently, I had mentioned Alex Ferreira. There's also an incredible pro surfer named Victor Bernardo, but these are all people who have come to us. Unfortunately, we're not financially backed by any fund, and we started this with a lot of support from friends and family. And then just, this outpour of love of people who have gravitated towards the product and been using the product and really liking it. So I'm really excited for what the rest of the year holds, because there's all of this opportunity that we're being presented with right now, just from people who have found us and love us. And that's certainly what's kept us going. So I think more than anything, I just wanted to say thank you to any of those people who might hear this.
Of course, yeah. And where can folks buy WiseBar if anyone's interested in trying it?
Yeah, online at wise-bar.com is a great way to support us. It also is going to provide you with more options. In addition to that, right now we're in Target. It should be in August. I think we'll relaunch with Sprouts. And then we're hopefully at the end of the year, we'll be in Whole Foods. We're kind of finalizing a deal with them. But online or on Amazon is a great way to support us. Absolutely. I mean, it helps us kind of spread the word. And with our focus really being on D2C this year, that would be incredibly helpful. And then if there are any really awesome grocery stores that you think that we should be in your local area where we would fit a good co-op, let us know. Reach out to, you can email me directly at josh@wise-bar.com. And we love supporting communities that you think would love us. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, Josh. Really appreciate your perspective and the topic around mindful eating, which I think is really undervalued, but super fun to talk about.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that'll do it for today's episode with Josh from WiseBar. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed listening to his journey, talking about how he created something that was delicious, nutritious, and delivered on some health benefits that he really wants to share with the world. My top takeaways for this episode are that mindfulness is unique to each of us, but it starts with understanding the ingredients that make us feel a certain type of way. And I think that's really interesting in the grand scheme of things, that there are so many ingredients within the food industry and within the world as a whole that maybe are untapped or undiscovered yet. So I think it's really exciting to hear about companies like WiseBar that are diving into some lesser known ingredients and really trying to explore and share their benefits with other people. The next, I learned all about the world of functional mushrooms and how exciting of a space it really is. I didn't realize that the FDA was studying functional mushrooms for different types of diseases or chronic diseases. So I think that's something really fascinating in the world of preventative health. And the last thing that I learned was that Fantastic Fungi, which is a documentary that if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly suggest that you watch it. I listed it out as one of the top documentaries that I would recommend to anybody interested in sustainable food watch. But I did not realize that Fantastic Fungi was partnering with food companies that are also promoting the space of functional mushrooms. It's enlightening to see the collaboration between established organizations and startups to really help spread their message, because when you work together, you can accomplish a lot more. And I look forward to seeing more of that. Make sure you check out Josh over at WiseBar, try the products and support them over there, and let them know what you think. I've personally tried the bars and I think they're really tasty, but interested to hear what you think. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Coming out next week, we'll talk with Allie Elliott from Farmer Foodie, and we'll learn all about human and social impact within the food industry and some things to look out for. Make sure you check out madetosustain.com, and if you really enjoyed today's episode, the greatest thing that you can do to have a greater impact in the world of sustainable food is share it with others, because our efforts really go a long way when multiple people are doing them. Make sure you come back next week for our next episode. Thanks so much, and see you next week.